Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to Hidden Treasure. Our guest today is Jaime Brooks. If you could unmute yourself.
Hello, everybody.
So you all came across Jaime, and last time she intervened, I think it's fair to say that it had some really positive reaction and sparked a lot of interest. So then I was like, oh, this is somebody who's got really, really interesting things to say. She's got a really interesting story. And for me, she's like the definition of a hidden treasure, of someone who's out there in the field, listening to people, open-hearted, being so kind that perhaps sometimes, some people might, take advantage of this kindness. You know the type. People who I call them sunflowers, like people who love too much, who are so kind that sometimes the narcissistic society that we live in doesn't really pay homage and respect to those type of people, and they're not always willing to put themselves forward. So I think it's good to do so. And so, Jaime, if you could perhaps in your own words, present yourself a little bit. What is your story? Yeah.
There's a lot to tell. So I have a bachelor's degree in public affairs and criminal justice. I didn't go to college till I was 30. I dropped out of high school in the 10th grade, kind of working backwards. Ran away from home a good dozen times. Ended up on the street and in foster care when I was 15. Hooked up with a man about 8 years older than me. We had 6 kids together for over the course of 10 years. So all throughout my 20s, I was a stay-at-home mom. And divorced when I was 30, went back to school, and lots of light bulbs started going off. And there's lots of twists and turns along the way. My oldest son is now 24, and he ended up on the streets too, and addicted to heroin. And my ex-husband was very focused on revenge. And so lots of dark stories there, but I don't really like to tell the stories where I show the victimhood. I knew in many ways that I was a mask for those who are suffering. And I have nothing but love in my heart for my ex-husband. I have a lot of sympathy and a lot of, I think, understanding. I probably understand him more than he understands himself. So I couldn't help my son, but I decided to direct my studies towards social work, and I got a job out of college. Well, I had lots of jobs out of college because I was raising 5 kids by myself without child support or anything. And I went into social work after going into law for a while. And I got a job with the city, and I interviewed people experiencing homelessness. And eventually I got hired to go into the jails and interview inmates. That was very difficult, and it was the most beautiful experience. I got to learn to listen, and I got to understand the shadow. And I developed a depth of love for every single person, and I just started to see the light in everyone, and I became very popular. I had a whole group of people that would write me letters from the jails, and so I saw about 10 people a day when I worked for the city. I had a pretty good feeling for boundaries for the most part, but I did cross the line several times and I brought people home with me. It was usually for just a couple nights in the dead of winter or some type of situation similar to that. So I decided to go and work with homeless children instead, thinking I might be better at holding boundaries, which is the absolute opposite. As suffering children on the streets in the middle of winter is much more difficult to say no to. So um, anyway, did that for about a year until again I crossed too many lines. And my 14-year-old son dared me to become a living statue. And I was unemployed. I was working as a nanny. Didn't know what I was going to do. Didn't know what to be when I grew up. I knew I had this college degree and $80,000 in student loan debt. I had 5 kids to take care of, no child support coming in, driving an old beater car, paying way too much money for rent. So I said, okay, let's do it. So my son and I painted ourselves from head to toe, and we did cowboys first. So that was a lot of fun, and I got addicted to it. And I came up with characters. I did Mother Earth, and then I would go down to the farmer's market, and I realized it was just meditation. I was paying attention to my breathing. I would slow myself down, but the contrast with having so many people looking at you uh, was fascinating, to be able to just stare at one point. But I would find a tree or the water to look at, and it was like you just melt into the water, or you become the tree. Um, and my awareness, like my peripheral vision, started to expand, and I could play with energy. I was determined to bring back the wink. So that was my famous thing. I would stand there as a statue until I would catch somebody. I could feel them looking at me, and I'd look at them really fast and wink at them. And then everyone would burst into laughter. And it was a great way to connect with people in these beautiful, rich moments. It was usually elderly people and children, which are my 2 favorite, because I think when we're young, we have this openness and we see everything through the eyes of imagination and curiosity. And I think as we get older, we slow down and we have a new appreciation for the simple things in life. Um, so it was really feeding me as much as I was having fun with it. And I would hand out roses. So I would hold a rose, and that would kind of dare people to come up to take the flower. So I could keep going. I'm a dispatcher now, and I don't do the statuing nearly as often. It's more of a challenge with COVID. You're not a very convincing statue if you're wearing a mask, so we'll see. But I have a new character coming up, Mary Poppins, who I feel like is kind of who I am anyway. I worked as a nanny for 20 years and raised all those kids, and so yeah, that's kind of it. Oh, and I just wrote and illustrated a book. Oh my gosh, that's my biggest excitement for everybody coming today. So I created a video reading of a book that I wrote called Mother's Song. And I feel like there's a significant power with story. Brian can talk to this, or anybody who's a writer, I think, understands that passion and love for story. And it seems right now with sense making, everyone's just running in a million directions, trying to make sense of where we've been, where we are, where we're going. And so I thought right now is a very important time to try to condense everything I learned about modernization theory and globalization and how we extract resources, how we exploit labors, what the global economy is all about, and that capitalism is an end game, and we very much need to come together to create a new reality. And the power to do that is fascinating. It's beautiful, but I think many haven't realized that yet. So I'm hoping, because I put illustrations and I put cute little rhyming words and cool words like bamboozled in my book, that it might reach audiences and be a source of empowerment. The book is meant to be a gift. where you give it to somebody else, and on the last page, um, there's an image where you can actually put a picture of the person you're giving it to. And so the story always ends with the person that you gave the book to. It gives them the seed of power. So yeah, that's that's about it in a very big nutshell.
Wow. You're such a beautiful person. It's hard to. It's really impressive how you are able to transcend your own pain and, still go on and do something constructive and keep going at it. And perhaps, I don't know why this character of justice, but it seems as if it seems like to me as a theme in your life of like being a sponsor for social justice. Um, does that does that resonate with you, Jamie?
Yeah, definitely. I feel that I developed a good balanced view of the issues, that we have a lot of external issues. We have systems and institutions that are designed to push against us, to push against our nature. And yeah, maybe that's the way it's supposed to be. Maybe that's why this Earth School is so beautiful and challenging, because if you can get through it without losing your sense of a self, then power to you, you know. Um, but I think there's two big parts of it. I think Jordan Peterson has a big point in saying, what was it, personal, or no, humility is the ability to, oh shoot, I can't remember the exact quote now, to admit personal insufficiency and having the willingness to learn. That's what I think, that's it. Um, so I think that that's true. And then I also think Mr. Rogers, who says you're perfect just the way you are, is true. And we can hold multiple truths. We can see the things that are wrong within the societies that we've built. And we can also see where we've been hijacked and conditioned. And yeah, we do need to be willing to open our eyes and move forward.
Hmm. And on that subject, you mentioned, so we had a chat and you shared a few like really like compelling, interesting stories that you've heard. Would you be willing to share those? Like, what are the most compelling use cases that you've heard that their example could help us learn about the bigger picture of what's going on?
You mean from my work in social work?
Yes, or listening to the inmates.
Mm-hmm.
No.
So yeah, I gave this some thought over the past few days, and there's one story that has always stood out for me. Uh, he was a man in his early 30s. He had two children, and he was part of a skinhead group. Um, Talked a lot about getting to Valhalla, and he was told me the story of being initiated into this group by his brothers, and um, so he and these guys, he was I think he said 12 or 13 years old, and they would drive around. He said they called it stomping a nigger. Let's go out and stomp a nigger. And they'd look for a Black person who was by themselves, and they found a young boy about the same age as him, and circled around the boy. And he said he was beating this boy senseless, but at one point they looked each other in the eye, and he said he saw the fear in the boy and he recognized it as his own, and he told the boy to run. And he said the boy just didn't understand what was happening, and so he had to pick the boy up and push him force him to run. And so then he got the beating because he was seen as weak. Um, so he had spent a year in prison when I met him. He just got out. And I actually got a text message from my previous boss warning me, hey, so-and-so just got out. We hear he's coming to the office. Just stay away from this guy. He's no good. My boss knew my backstory, and I think he felt that while a lot of the clients would request to talk to me, because I think they knew my nature, he also knew that I was a bit of a lamb. And so, but people would tell me stories that they wouldn't normally tell, which I loved. So it took about 6 months. Finally, we got him housed and he got his kids back. But then he was at risk for losing his kids. And I met with him and asked him, what was going on. And so he had connected with the church. I think, Clint, you might appreciate this one. And so what was fascinating was he was able to reflect that the reason he left the skinhead group was because he valued his own critical thinking. And he didn't want to believe in these things anymore. And he wanted to believe that we were all one, but he went from that and then grasped onto religion, which was beautiful for him. It really helped give him a sense of, it gave him a new story. But in that story was spare the rod, spoil the child, and you must get your children to obey you. And so he gave me this long lecture, it felt, on how you have to teach people to obey and believe. And so I tried to reflect back to him how, that might have been similar to this other story, but it's interesting how we attach to stories, and it makes sense. We need to make sense of things. So, but yeah, the power of story, the power of belief. It's profound.
Is there another story that you would like to share, perhaps?
I can't think of any right now.
No. Okay. How about the audience? Perhaps we can open for a question already. Please, raise your hand like this if you have one. Otherwise, I'm gonna continue. Yes, Terry, go ahead.
Jaime, first I want to say I'm just knocked out by your story. I mean, I feel the place that you're coming from, and it is amazing. It's awesome, and I look forward to hearing more and being in the space with you. My question is, you said just briefly that something happened, I think, in your 20s that caused you to start opening to see the oneness. Was that an event or a series of events or a belief system? What was that?
So that's a tough one to answer. It feels like there's been a series of things that have kind of inched me closer and closer to that understanding. Just being a mother, I think, was such a big part of that, because immediately you're putting someone else's needs in front of your own. And I did it with absolute love, but I did have a near-death experience when I was 38, no, 39. It wasn't too long ago. It was 3 or 4 years ago. And that one really shot me through. After that, it took on a whole new meaning. It wasn't so much theoretical. It was experiential. And it was actually really difficult. And I still do have challenges with adjusting. My body for a while felt foreign, like a prison, and like punishment almost. you know, very limiting. And then it felt like I became more sensitive to all those shadows. Whereas before that, you know, when I was working with the jail and in social work, and I had a certain thick skin about me. And so I could sit with this darkness and not have such a visceral effect by it. But now I'll have someone just walk down the road when I'm sitting on the porch, and I sometimes can feel them coming, you know, before I can even see them. Uh, and I'll feel that something's just not right. And sure enough, when they show up, it's somebody uh, in distress. But the other side of that is also true. Oh my goodness, when I see the light shining in somebody, oh, I get like, it's a feeling now. It's like I get tingles all through my body, like almost like when your foot falls asleep or something, but in a really good way. And so it's beautiful. It's just like a heightened sensitivity to the light and the dark. So, and then I went on 3 psilocybin trips within a short period of time to really understand it. And then I was explained. And that's probably for another time, but those were profound experiences too that really explained to me that we really are one.
You mentioned as well in your bio that you are a practical mystic,
Mm.
and perhaps I mean, he joins this experience. Actually, I'm very curious about this very experience that you had of you know, light and shadow, and what is your perspective on it?
For me, it's loving the shadow. So uh, I have a lot of conversations with loved ones who've passed. My grandmother was like my mother, and my brother, and he was just the most beautiful human being ever. Um, and I talk to them regularly, and I've thought about some of the dark characters I've met and what it will be like when we're reunited. And I have nothing but love. I have so much love for them, and because of the richness of their story, of their experience, and the willingness to go into form and have those experiences because they give back to the whole. And that range of experience is what it's all about. So, um, yeah, I guess it's just a lot of love. It's a lot of love, but I also have a lot of fire in me too, and um, it's a strange balance. It's a strange balance. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like that you are able to show compassion where most people will say, well, they're just criminals, you know. And why did you invite them into your home as well? Like it sounds like a dangerous affair, like something very that very few people will be willing to do. Like,
Mm.
why did you do it?
I think because karma is opportunity. You know, we think of karma as punishment, but uh, I don't know. I guess a lot of it was just curiosity, wanting to understand the darkness.